So I want to welcome everyone who is here tonight. Thanks for coming. I want to say hello and welcome to everyone who is online. Thanks for joining us. Tonight's agenda. That's your cue. There you go. So tonight we're going to have a quick update on Cool Spring Crossing. We'll have our ally from the Route 24 Alliance speak a little bit about Belle Meade. And then I'm going to give an update on the Land Use Reform Working Group. And then we have our guest speakers, Emily Gnarl, Will Helt, and Michelle Koenig are going to be here. And I'm really looking forward to what they have to share with you. I looked at their slides briefly, and it really pertains to some of the work that we're doing at the Land Use Reform Working Group. So I'm really looking forward to that. All right, next slide. So we're going to go through a few announcements. Have your cell phones ready. There might be an event here that interests you, and I would suggest you take a picture of the slide, or you may be able to find it. You'll probably be able to find it on our website, but you're here now, so I would say go ahead and take a picture. Next slide. If you are not on the mailing list for Eyes on County Council, you want to sign up and do that. So on your way out, sign up and just put Eyes on EOOC so we can make sure that you're on that mailing list. They are doing a wonderful job as far as putting clearly and concisely what is going on in County Council, each of those meetings. But they are also monitoring the Land Use Reform Working Group, and they are also monitoring P&Z zoning hearings. So I would highly recommend that you sign up for that newsletter. Next. Look who made Beach Life. Yay for Sussex Preservation Coalition. So Beach Life has decided they want to expand some of the things that they cover. It's just not about the wonderful life that we enjoy down here, but it's also about the natural resources and things that we have to do to preserve it. So they were kind enough to do an article. I love the fact that they titled it Banding Together, because that's what we're about. And they interviewed some other folks from the Land Use Reform Working Group. So if you do not subscribe to Beach Life, you can buy it on newsstands. Browse About Book, I think, has them, but also think about subscribing. All right, next slide. Upcoming meetings on August 12th, Senator Russ Huxtable and Representative Claire Snyder Hall will be our guest speakers. Russ is going to talk a little bit about how the county and the state work together, and then we'll have a panel discussion with both of them. We'll have about 5 questions that we're going to ask as board members, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So that's a meeting you'll want to attend. This is a date you need to have on your calendar. September 8th, it's a Monday evening. We're going to be presenting an evening with Doug Tallamy. And the good news is we were going to consider charging because it's expensive to bring Doug in to speak, but we are going to offer it free of charge. This is your one opportunity to hear Doug Tallamy speak free of charge. Doug is a highly respected entomologist, ecologist, and speaker. He has dedicated over 40 years to studying the intricate relationships between insects and plants and their crucial role in fostering healthy ecosystems. He currently serves as the T.A. Baker Professor of Agriculture at the University of Delaware and has delivered thousands of talks on the vital role native plants play in sustaining wildlife and also sustaining us. He has authored several books, and they're also good reads. I highly recommend you read them, such as Bringing Home Nature, The Woods in Your Backyard, The Living Landscape, The Nature of Oaks, Nature's Best Hope, and How Can I Help? So on a upcoming slide, you'll see a QR code where you can register for that meeting. We want to fill the high school auditorium. It'll be we're expecting enough people that this room won't hold it. We moved it to the high school. Also, when you came in, I hope you noticed the display case out in front of the library. We have a big display out there of his books, and a poster announcing it. You can also find the QR code. Please tell friends. We have people coming from out of state to see this. This is a big opportunity. September 16th, we'll be giving an update on the Land Use Reform Working Group, and our speaker for October 14th is TBD. We have something in the works, but until we finalize it, I don't want to put it up there. Other events coming up. Oh, yes, yes. The only one that's not here, yeah, thank you. Fenwick Nurtures Nature. We participated in this last year, July 17th from 1 to 3. This is, if you're near Fenwick, or it's a worthwhile day, just a couple hours to spend with them. The Land Use Reform Working Group, our next meeting is July 24th at 10 o'clock at the Emergency Operations Center in Georgetown. Next slide. Okay. Now, as most of you probably, hopefully know, there is a special election on August 5th, and this is for the RD20. We have two candidates, Democrat Alana Berry and Republican Nikki Miller. There will be a candidate forum sponsored by or hosted by the League of Women Voters on July 31st. From 7 to 8:30 at the Milton Elementary School. Moderator will be Kim Hoey Stevenson. No, did that change? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So it's not Kim, it's somebody else. All right. But nevertheless, please get out there to see that candidate forum, and most importantly, make sure you vote on August 5th. Now, next slide. Some of you may be saying, am I in RD20? I'm not sure. So I just put this up here so you can see. This is Route 9. You can see Route 1 and the coast. We have Gravel Hill Road. No. That's Broad Hill Road. And then this is Gravel Hill. Yeah, right here, right? Yes. So if you live within that area, please, please, please get out and vote on August 5th. Sand Hill Road. Thank you. It was a hill. I knew that much. Okay, next slide. If you are a part of an organization that's interested in seeking grant funding for spring tree planting, you have until July 21st by emailing de.gov/Teddy. They're looking for, they want to make grants between 20 and 40,000. So if you have a big project, or you know of someone who's looking to do a big tree planting project, make sure you apply for those funds. Next slide. Doug Tallamy, I already talked about. Next slide. Did anybody need to see that slide? Okay, go back. Go back to Doug Tallamy. All right, let's get a picture. You're welcome. Everybody okay? All right, good. All right, next slide. There is a camping trip with the Sierra Club, October 10th through October 12th. That's a Friday through Sunday. If you are interested in this, I would highly advise that you make your reservations at Trap Pond now. Those reservations fill up. And you can go online to sit the Sierra Club to join them. And it's on our website too. Good. All right. Okay, and now I'd like to introduce Joe Pica.
So, Cold Spring Crossing, we've talked about it once or twice here in this group. And you presumably have been tracking along with its progress. And so the big news, of course, is that at its last meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted favorably to recommend that the Cold Spring Crossing changes that they are responsible for reviewing, and there are 4 of them. One is a rezoning, one is the amendment to the future land use map, and then there are 2 conditional uses as well. All four of those were approved by 4-0 votes by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so there is a favorable recommendation that will be moving forward. We haven't yet actually been able to get the full version of the motions. The two large ones, the rezoning and the amendment, were quite long, quite detailed, very extensive, tended to parallel arguments that we had heard made by the developer's lawyer. And so most of those arguments have been accepted by planning and zoning, and they're moving forward. The next step in this is it moves on to county council. The council is flexible in terms of when it will decide to have a public hearing on Cold Spring. It's an important decision because a memo of understanding was signed between the county and the state level committee on cabinet committees, excuse me, the cabinet committee on state planning issues states that after a public hearing is held by county council, and if the county then decides it wants to move forward, before the county council takes a final vote, they are to meet with the cabinet committee and resolve some of the differences that were raised during the PLUS review process. So when the county decides it's going to move forward on this issue is really at the discretion of county council at this point. We have no idea when a public hearing would be held. I'm sure it will be an event of great interest to many people in Sussex County. And then we'll discover whether there needs to be a third stage in all of this. Again, we're monitoring this closely. We're preparing for a public hearing. When we hear more details about this, we will encourage you to be preparing as well. We have attempted to get our message out in a variety of settings and in several different ways. And I hope that you have seen the letters from Jill Hicks and by Rich Barrasso and by Joe Pica and by others as well. And so keep your letters flowing, okay? Next slide. Our basic argument at this point is that, that the county should not move forward at this time. That there are a number of reasons for delay, and we've listed several of them here. The Land Use Reform Working Group is still at work. It will, at some point early in the fall, we're told, come up with a set of recommendations that it will be presenting to county council. Many of the concerns that are among the recommendations being considered are things that have a bearing on the overall question of planning growth in the county. And among other things, one recommendation says that there should be alignment between the county's decisions and the state investment levels, particularly state investment level 4, which has been violated with some frequency by the county over the last 4 or 5 years since the comprehensive plan went into place. And so there are a number of issues from that group that need to be addressed by county council that could potentially have a bearing on Cold Spring. In fact, the state is going to be coming out with its new round of investment levels, which it has to do on a 5-year rolling schedule in December of this year. And so new guidelines for where the state feels that growth is appropriate and where it's inappropriate are about to be forthcoming. There is a follow-up group on the US 9 route corridor study. There was originally a corridor study that was done, came in with recommendations. One recommendation is let's have another study, a follow-up, sponsored by DelDOT, focused exclusively on Route 9. And that is in the works. We don't know when it will be completed. It doesn't have a deadline stated. Moreover, in the middle of next year, about 12 months from now, perhaps a little earlier, we will be beginning, Sussex will be beginning its newest round of comprehensive planning. And the comprehensive plan needs to be completed by 2018. Takes usually about a year and a half, if not longer. And just as SPC is kind of preparing itself for that process, the county might do itself a favor by not making major commitments, and we believe Cold Spring Crossing is a major commitment, before the public has the full opportunity to weigh in on growth issues, right? So those four things in particular are ones that we've been emphasizing. I've added a couple to that list. One is that we know that the council is moving in the direction of adopting a new ordinance on collecting school construction fees. Those have not yet been completed. We don't have an ordinance that's been proposed yet. That's up for discussion and hopefully conclusion. SPC supports a construction fee strongly. In the same way, the council has been reviewing carefully the issues surrounding fire and EMS services in the county and the need for funding by those volunteer fire departments throughout the county. We can hope that there's going to be some movement in the direction of having a coherent plan. Certainly the consultant who has reported to them has recommended some changes in the way that the county approaches fire and EMS. And then finally, coming out of the working group, SPC feels strongly that the county needs a coherent, comprehensive plan on affordable housing, as opposed to having piecemeal actions taken. And so we're hoping that there will be some receptivity on the part of council to the whole question of affordable housing. And that is one of the issues at Cold Spring, because there are 175 affordable housing units and an additional 525 units that are being advertised as workforce housing, which it's unclear to whom they will be affordable. And so this whole question about workforce housing, affordable housing, has a direct bearing on Cold Spring and on the pending proposal. So our view is not now, delay action until a lot of these things that are very important, very relevant to Cold Spring have been resolved. We will try to keep you aware of all these things. We encourage you to watch the Cape Gazette and other sources of news. Spotlight Delaware frequently runs pieces on this, on questions about development in Sussex County. They now have a full-time Sussex reporter as well. So we encourage you to kind of keep up to date. We will do our best. If you've got questions for us, please let us know, and we'll try to get back to you in a timely way. So that's where we are right now, folks, and stay tuned. There's sure to be action.
Thanks, Joe. Next, I'd like to bring up Judy Rose Seibert. She is representing Route 24 Alliance, one of our allies, and they are working Belmead.
Hello, everybody. Okay. So I am here, as Jill just said, as a spokesperson for Route 24 Alliance, a group that was initially formed by Yule Lee. And actually, my friend Maggie is handing out a flyer that many of you didn't pick up when you came in, which is about the proposed change of zone of the horse farm on Route 24, which is next to Beacon Middle School, to become a C4 commercial district. Now, a commercial district does have many advantages. It has shops and residences all in one site, allowing people to walk from their homes to many businesses. However, the Love Creek Farm in Lewis, formerly called Belle Meade, is not an appropriate site for a C4 for many, many reasons. Let's see. How many of you were at the P&Z hearing for Belle Meade? Anybody? Okay, few. And so, as I said, many people know this as Belle Meade Farm, which was private. Now the applicant Capano has purchased it, and they are offering public riding lessons and summer camps to kids with their horses, and also yoga with horses in the adjacent pasture. So it's now open to the public. And initially, the applicant offered quote unquote affordable housing. 10% of the 332 apartments would have been available to those who would make $85,000 or more. That was their affordable housing offering. However, it may be that when they come before county council, that they may offer a lower rate. We'll have to wait and see. So this change of zone is for 334 apartments and 125,000 square feet of retail space, causing 6,800 additional vehicle trips a day on Route 24. And 3% of those would be trucks, according to their plus application. And according to DelDOT, a major impact on the road is if there's an additional 2,000 trips per day. So this will have 6,800. So this will be a major, major, major plus change to Route 24. And it will affect everybody from Lewis, Rehoboth, all the way down to Millsboro. And even further down to Dagsboro, because many people commute up Route 24 from Millsboro and further south. So it's going to affect not just us here in Lewis in District 3, but also Districts 3, 5, and 4. Now I want to get into a little technical stuff. Bear with me. So DelDOT has what's called a vehicle volume summary, where it lists the annual average daily trips on Route 24. They did a count in 2020, and it was from Plantations Road to south of the Love Creek Bridge. The number of trips was 15,747. Now remember, that count was done in 2020. DelDOT has added a few percentage bits since then, but 2020 was COVID, was also Route 24 was under construction, and actually the previous time that they did a count, it was at more than 19,000. So anyway, there is what's called the current highway capacity manual, and in its current edition, it gives a range of 11,900 to 15,900 annual average daily trips with what's called level of service D. So that's the worst that the county considers acceptable along this two-way, two-lane streets with signals. So that portion of Route 24, which goes from where the site entrance is going to be at Lexington Avenue, which is where Saddle Ridge development is, down past Love Creek Bridge, that will be at or above capacity for the road. Now, Route 24 Alliance did enlist the help or pay for the help of a traffic engineer in order to get this data. So it's no wonder that most of the comments on the land use docket, the county's land use docket for this CZ 2001 are about traffic. Let's see. And the really interesting question is, why didn't DelDOT report that the road, this section of the road was at or near capacity when it performed or when the traffic impact study analysis was done? Whose responsibility is that? Why wasn't that reported to planning and zoning? And currently, DelDOT has no CTP or capital transportation project to dualize that portion of 24 or of the Love Creek Bridge. Although I, within the last week, received an email from the community relations specialists at DelDOT saying that they were tentatively adding beginning of considering that to DelDOT's CTP program. So the county council hearing is a week from today at 1:30. So theoretically, check the county council website, and also you could check the Belle Meade website to see if there's any change of time. There are ways that you can still take action if you are opposed to this change of zone. You can write a comment on the county's land use application docket. Oh, and yeah, that's up there on the, but if you don't want to write all that down, just go to this website, tinyearl.com, Delaware, DE Belle Meade, and it will have a link to the land use docket where you can write a comment. Currently, as of this afternoon, there are 171 comments. Very interesting to read. Many of them came from Millsboro. There's still time to write a few letters to the editor. So there were 3 letters in the Gazette and also an ad placed by Route 24 Alliance. Did anybody see it in today's Gazette? Yeah, okay. And look for other letters to the editor in Beta Bay News and Delaware Online. So the Route 24 Alliance Belle Meade portion of the site does have a lots of information, including the traffic impact study. And it's interesting, this area, you know, is called the Henlopen TID, right? Transportation Improvement District. And ordinarily, an applicant wouldn't have to do a traffic impact study. But because it was such a great volume of traffic, DelDOT required that they do a traffic impact study. Anybody here from Hart's Landing or Brookhammer? Well, those people are going to have the worst time if this gets approved. In the traffic impact study, it says there'll be queues of 63 feet long to turn right onto Route 24 from Hart's Landing. Now, in the land use docket, there are 2 emergency nurses who have stated that they live in Hart's Landing and that they have a hard time getting out of Hart's Landing to get to perform emergency services. And of course, DelDOT doesn't do any left-hand turn studies, right? No left-hand turn studies. They expect you to turn right and make a U-turn where you can, or go away around the long way. Of course, if you live in Hart's Landing, there's no way to U-turn before you give to Love Creek Bridge. Okay, second slide. Oh, so that's the farm. Okay, here's the horse farm again. I did go to a yoga class there, and we were encouraged to take photos. And in this photo, you can see in the background, that group of mature trees is part of the 5 acres of mature forest that will be taken down if this goes through. And of course, though, those 5 acres protect the headwaters of Dorman Branch of Love Creek. So let's see. I know Jill would like me to wrap this up. Just let me say that in the on the land use docket, there's a very interesting comment by someone named Bill or William Maylander. And there are, and actually if you go to the Belmead portion of the Route 24 Alliance website, there are 3 different portions of the county code that we believe this development would violate. Oh, just one last thing. You know, when P&Z gave their recommendation for approval of this, one of the things that they cited was that it was comparable to the what's there along Route 24. And they also cited the 5 apartment buildings that were to be the Sussex County rental program apartments. However, that application is stalled according to planning and zoning staff. They haven't received all their approvals and they do not seem to be moving forward. So, and actually, if you do look at William Maylander's comment, on the last page, he shows a picture of Route 24 from Mulberry Knoll Road to Love Creek Bridge and the very small portions of commercial entities that are there. And then, of course, the 2 schools. And then there are lots of individual homes that turn directly onto Route 24. This is just going to be a terrible traffic hazard. Okay. Oh, of course, you know, if they don't deny, we will have a lot of requests for, you know, if approved. And one of them will be concurrency of the building out of Route 24 and the Love Creek Bridge dualization. And then many, many others, which you can find on the website. All right, thank you. Take action.
Thank you, Judy Rose. Yeah, so I just want to give a real quick update on the Land Use Reform Working Group. Next slide. So thus far, I think we've had 5 or 6 meetings. I've lost count. The facilitators put together a list of 22 recommendations that we are now working on. One of them that of note is that right now it seems as though the group is ready to recommend that AR1 go to 1 dwelling unit per acre. And that'll be a great move if that happens, but that's where we're headed. Other additions and revisions that we have requested, I do have a great group of advisors that are helping me with this. So far, we want to make sure that anything being proposed by right, that means without a public hearing, we want those words taken out. We believe that right now, everything should require at least 1 public hearing. We want to require that there is a conservation plan for any subdivision outside of what's going to be the proposed growth zone. And a conservation plan would be an assessment, an inventory of natural resources, and a management plan for that. And then also we're proposing that the yield plan be added back into the cluster subdivision ordinance, again, outside of the growth zone. We also want to make sure that we correctly define superior design. And this would be a rewrite of code 99-9C, and developers and SPC are looking forward to getting some clarity. We want to require infrastructure concurrency, that if they're going to be adding these developments, that either the infrastructure is there to handle it or there is concurrency so that both happen at the same time and milestones are reached. There seems to be agreement that we're going to restrict development in state investment level 4. Again, just like the 1 unit per acre, and restricting development in state investment level 4 is a big win. We want to restrict building in the floodplain. This is a surprise to me, but in Newcastle County and in Kent County, there are restrictions about building in the floodplain. There are none here in Sussex County, other than you can't build on federal protected wetlands, and you have to stay out of the resource buffer area, which we also know is inadequate. But other than that, you can build in a floodplain right now. We want inspections to be permitted by local and state agencies. Right now, a developer can submit an application and deny local and state agencies access to that property, going on to inspect it. And then we want protections for federal and state endangered species. Right now, we don't have any. So we want to see that happen. Next slide. So the thing to remember is that we are the voting public. This will go to county council, and there will be public hearings. So we are, there are some good things that are happening. There are some things that we need to keep an eye on. But just remember to take any of your discontent, now, past, future, and turn it into positive momentum. If you ever feel dismayed, turn it into positive energy and get engaged. Next slide. And then what can you do? So you can attend future meetings or watch online. And the next one is July 24th. Please sign up for the Eyes on County Council. That group is doing a great job following the progress of this group. Write to your council members, write letters to the editor, and then when these public hearings begin, please be there and please get engaged, speak up. Next slide. Next slide. We talked about that. And I just want to thank you for your support. There is an advisory group that's helping me. They're doing a wonderful job, but I've also received phone calls and emails from several of you here, and they are greatly appreciated. So thank you for your encouragement. Next slide. And right now, I'll take a couple of questions while we're getting ready to set up for our guest speakers. Sue Claire? Okay, so the question was yield plan. What does that mean? So when the cluster subdivision is actually a good, it's actually a good tool, and a lot of jurisdictions use it. And what it does is it says, rather than building everything out, in this case, we're hoping to go to 1 to the acre, you can cluster everything together so that it saves the developer money in utilities, putting all those utilities through the ground, but then you use all the area that would have been houses as environmental protections. So in this case, we're saying, let's do a conservation plan and identify what areas should be protected, and then through that yield plan, it would protect those areas. Now, I didn't say what the yield plan does. So what it does is say if there's 100 acres, right? And you can put 1 house per acre. The yield plan says you first lay out what that would look like. And because of putting roads in, putting stormwater ponds in, just the configuration of the land itself, you probably wouldn't get 100 homes on 100 acres. You might get 80 or 90. And so that says on that 100 acres in that cluster subdivision, you can build 80. Right now, because that's not in there, 100 acres, 100 houses. So it kind of limits, and it also protects. Now today, 100 acres, they can build 200, and that's pretty much what's happening. So, okay. And now I would like to introduce our guest speaker. Emily, you want me to introduce you and then you introduce the other speakers, or? Okay, how about if I just introduce all of you? Okay, great. So Emily Gnarl is the Delaware External Affairs Advisor for the Nature Conservancy in Pennsylvania and Delaware. She is the outward-facing representative of the Nature Conservancy's priorities, projects, and accomplishments in Delaware. in coordination with the Executive Director, Lori Brennan. The chapter staff, Delaware trustees and volunteers, Emily plans, implements, and coordinates efforts to further the Nature Conservancy's mission and goals in Delaware. All right. And so I worked with Emily to get this set up for tonight. Now, we also have Michelle, who is with her. Michelle is Director of the Conservation and Watershed Planning with the Center for the Inland Bays. Michelle worked for American Forest Foundation as a Western Conservation Coordinator and for the USDA Farm Service Agency as a program technician. And then we also have, where's Will Helt, is in the back. And Will is the Director of Oceans and Coast. Will oversees the Delaware Bayshore and Seascape program, where the Nature Conservancy is currently seeking to improve coastal resiliency along Delaware's coast in the face of climate change. And with that, I'm going to introduce Michelle. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. So we're going to do a little tag team presentation here. I'm going to start out by talking about the Delaware Land Protection just overall and give a little bit about who we are, what we do. And then I'm going to pass it on to Will to talk about some of the really cool products that we've been able to put together. So next slide. I think I'm going to start out with who the DLPC is. So the Delaware Land Protection Coalition, we formed back in November of 2021. Every year that gets crazier and crazier. And we are, the members will be on the next slide, but we were a group of basically conservation organizations that came together because we wanted to see more land conservation happen throughout the state. And so what we've been really focusing on is not only funding, but also how to grow partnership opportunities to fill a big capacity gap. Next slide. These are our members. We started off with just a handful back in 2021. We've grown quite significantly. Like I said, we're mostly conservation nonprofits, but we do have Newcastle County Public Works, and then we do have some folks on the DLPC in an advisory capacity from DNREC and also from DDA. Next slide. Our main goal since forming has really been focused on increasing the amount of state funding for open space. But along with that, we really have focused on finding creative solutions that enable NGOs to help the state protect and manage land. DNREC has had a capacity issue for a very long time as far as land conservation goes, and that's why a lot of their acquisitions have occurred either in or directly around existing protected land. And so we've really wanted to find ways that we could work with the state to protect lands that are not exactly adjacent or in holdings, so that we could see land protected in all parts of the state. Next slide. I don't know that this is a really important slide to nail down to you guys. I think you all probably get it. You know, we are focusing on open space for many reasons. These are our primary. Of course, outdoor recreation is important not only for us physically and mentally, but it's also a big economic driver for the state. It's, like I said, good for mental and physical health, and then it also aids climate mitigation and adaptation. And so a lot of our conversations lately have been about the amount of land, protected land, that we're going to lose due to sea level rise, and how do we take that into account for the future? How do we make sure that we still have good protected land as the sea levels continue to rise? And Will's going to talk about that in a few minutes. Next, thank you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the open space program. Now, I'm not a DNREC employee, so this is just all the knowledge I've gleaned over the years. But I think this is important just so that everybody understands how the program currently operates. It was started in 1990, and it's managed by DNREC with the help of the Open Space Council. And there's four agencies that, four or five, four agencies that are eligible for funding. And those are listed up here. It's a 100% voluntary program that does include conservation easement, where the landowner still holds the rights to their land, but they just sell the development rights, or outright acquisition where a landowner just sells their entire property, all their rights to the state. The fact that it's 100% voluntary means that the state can't go and do direct outreach to landowners, so they have to kind of wait for folks to come to them. Next slide. And this is just, so the land and water conservation. All right. So the Land and Water Conservation Trust Fund is what funds the program. The program is funded through realty transfer taxes. And I have a slide, I think it's the next slide that shows you the amount, but by law, the state is supposed to, DNREC is supposed to get $10 million every single year for the open space program. 9 million of that goes to direct acquisition costs and 1 million goes into a management fund for the parks, for trails, for all the maintenance and all that good stuff. And then so this is, I wanted to show this, this is a really good slide to understand that even though the state's supposed to give $10 million every year to the program, that obviously hasn't happened. So we have 2016, 17, and 18 where the program was zeroed out. And when the program is zeroed out, that means that the legislature made a decision, a conscious decision to zero that out in the budget. We have one great year. This is 2023 is our big success year. This is one of the first years that we were really advocating for an increase in funding, and we saw a double in funding. So instead of 10 million, the state received 20. But of course, you can see it went right back down to the 10 million, and we had to actually work for that. So that's why we've been really focusing on funding as a coalition, because even though it's supposed to be safe, it's not. And we all know that land has gotten really expensive, and so $10 million does not go very far at all. And so it's not kept up with inflation, and that's also why we're really wanting to see an increase in funding. I've already sort of talked about this. I've gotten this spiel down really well lately. So the purchasing power of 9 million has significantly decreased. Like I said, land has gotten so expensive that it really just doesn't go very far. There's one property that we're looking at that's 96 acres and the appraisal came in at $6 million. So that's almost the entire budget for if the state were to pursue that property. I don't think I need to really talk about development soaring to this group. We all know that that's happening. And that's another reason why we want to see the state increase funding, because we can't compete. We just can't. We don't have enough money to compete with developers. And so this is I toss this in there because this is all the fun stuff we do. And this is a way that if you guys are interested, you can engage with the DLPC. Every single year we host a conservation day at Legislative Hall, where we get together and we go and we chat with all of our key legislators, talk about open space, why it's so important, and then also talk to them about why we need more funding. And the past few years, we've been talking about a different way to fund land conservation. And so this happens, I think we've done it in April, the last couple of years. It'll probably be in April again. And so if anybody is interested in attending, it's always a really, really fun day. And Emily and I plan everything. So you just have to show up, you take your little itinerary, and then you go about your day. So it's really fun. It's a really great way to get in front of your legislators and just talk about what's important to you. And then we also have an open space fact sheet, which I probably should have printed and brought, but I didn't. So we always have copies, though. I think there might be some on the center's website, but if anyone's interested, I can always send that out. And that basically just, I can definitely send you it. Yes. Oh, perfect. Yeah, definitely. So it goes over basically all the stuff I've talked about, and then gives an overview again of what the DLPC is seeking to achieve every single year. And so that's the DLPC. I'm going to hand it off to Will, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the great actual physical work that we've been able to accomplish. So thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. So as Michelle said, I'm Will. I work with the Nature Conservancy and very closely with Emily. I've got props. We also have more of these in the back. So I'm going to talk to you today about two recent documents that we produced. The first one in partnership with the Delaware Land Protection Coalition. And the second one takes kind of a step back The first one looks more about land use and land protection. The other one is more about a more holistic look at conservation. And so as we've been working with the LPC about increasing funding and support for open space and protection in Delaware, we thought, so we're we're an environmental conservation organization. Well, what does success look like? If we're advocating for more land protection funding, what would that be put towards? And so we embarked on this mapping study to identify what would conservation success look like. And we came up with this conservation blueprint, and it's really meant to be a conversation starter. And so we're trying to identify areas within Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex County that would be interesting or might be compelling places for conservation protection, land conservation protection. So next slide, please. This is a way, and I think this this kind of wordy and wonky slide here. I'll walk us through it. I think this aligns well with the Sussex Preservation Coalition in that this is a flood adaptation hierarchy, and I feel like it's good timing that we've got this torrential downpour outside. So this encompasses not just coastal flooding. I'm a coastal scientist, so I think a lot about sea level rise and flooding along our coastline. This framework you can put towards, I'm trying to think about, in light of the disasters in Texas, riverine flooding as well. So the same principles apply. And the way we want to walk through this, so this is put out by some of our Nature Conservancy colleagues in New York. This applies more broadly, but the right here in gray is kind of the flood adaptation solutions where we are. And so you think about hardening, you think about shorelines, trying to keep that water out. So building up bulkheads or these other practices, engineering gray infrastructure to prevent flooding. And where we want to be is more over here. And so the gold standard would be natural buffers. So ideally, and I like to think, I use the Delaware Bay Shore as a good example. We have quite a bit of open space, including farmland, forest land, marshes along the Delaware Bay Shore. There's big areas for these natural flood events to happen and not cause disasters. And so ideally we keep it that way. And that's kind of where I think the alignment with the Sussex Preservation Coalition is these natural open spaces that we have, we want to keep them this way because they're serving functions and they benefit us. And so there's a bunch in between. I'll admit too, a lot of my previous work has been in the nature-based risk reduction. I think how this paper is kind of interesting in that it says that is good. So you're thinking about nature-based solutions like living shorelines. We want to make sure we're not hardening the shoreline, but we're still taking that protect approach. But we want to really move towards we need to figure out ways to accept the water. The water is going to happen. These floods, these rain events are going to keep getting stronger. We want to make sure that we have floodplains available for them to breathe and move. And so this has been kind of a foundational, I'd say, philosophical our thinking and please. That's okay. And so why this, why now? So we did another analysis leading up to this. And so DNREC projects 9 to 23 inches of sea level rise by the year 2050. That's kind of wild to think about. So in the last century at the Lewis tide gauge, we've seen about 1 foot of sea level rise. And we can expect that to increase, right? 9 to 23 inches is quite a bit, and that number is old. So that's a number that came out of a 2017 sea level rise technical committee that DNREC. Hoping to get new numbers, honestly, any day, any week, and we'll update these maps to reflect that. So with that in mind, we use plus 2 feet of sea level rise, and this map is kind of small. We'll definitely share all these with y'all, but the green, or all the colors on here, so we've got green, orange, and reddish pink, are conserved lands in Delaware, protected open space. And the orange is what we see to be impacted with the 2 feet of sea level rise, so by that 2050 scenario. We also mapped, just out of curiosity, plus 5 feet, which is the 2100 scenario. That's often the distance, but I think the takeaway is first, we have a lot of protected land along the coastline, and that's no accident. We have, ecologically, we've long recognized this corridor is important for the salt marshes as a migratory flyway for birds. There's huge ecological importance to these. And so we've demonstrated that with our refuges, with all the state conservation land that we have in that area. There's a lot more orange than pink here is what I want to highlight, and that's that 25-year horizon. And so when you add it all up, it's about 46% of currently protected lands is going to be impacted with that 2 feet of sea level rise. And so for us, that screams we're losing protected lands. We need to think about how we acquire and protect new lands, ideally at a commensurate rate somewhere, so we're not getting a net negative in Delaware. And so as we were putting this together, we were thinking, well, we need to really look at where would our efforts be best placed as the Nature Conservancy from a conservation perspective. So our map is going to identify what we're calling conservation opportunity areas. And so we're looking at habitats of high conservation value, ideally ones that are more consolidated. So very fragmented habitats provide less ecological value than ones that are in larger blocks. So you think about land that's been set aside within a subdivision versus maybe the Redden State Forest, or in our cases, the Milford Neck area, or our McCay Preserve, for example. So we ideally like more intact, larger blocks of land. And so next slide, please. We also, so to put this together, we took these data layers. I mentioned the sea level rise layer. That's the first one at the top. We brought in the Delaware Ecological Network. So that's one that's been used for conservation practitioners in DNREC in Delaware, the Wildlife Action Plan. We also brought in the Nature Conservancy's Northeast Habitat Classification Guide. So really the Ecological Network identifies habitats in Delaware, but we also have these maps that put more regional context about priority habitats. So we brought those in as well. And then we used the existing land cover, land use data, and we created this map here. And so on the next slide, you'll see a zoom in on Sussex, and I'll walk you through it a bit. So the green is those existing protected lands like we had before. The blue crosshatching is where that sea level rise will impact these lands. The beigeish is existing farmland. We have gray, which is what's been identified as more of a developed, it's a US Census designated urban area, but it's more where the development exists and occurs. And then the orange are where we've identified potential conservation opportunities. So when you ask, well, what do you want to protect? Where do you want to do? For us, for our values, it would most likely be in some of these orange areas. And again, it's just a conversation starter. So we actually, even on our website, we made it so you can't zoom in, so you can't see specific parcels. We really wanted to keep this to an area. So you could look at this and say, oh, some of these areas behind Prime Hook might be good land protection, conservation opportunities, for example. And then similarly around the Mispillion watershed, there's quite a bit of still natural lands. In my mind, ones along the Mispillion River, probably in floodplains, that could see some protection. So this is on our website. We'll send out the links as well. We've also got this document that goes further into the analysis and what we have, but we really want folks to take this and use it, and it's a work in progress. So we shared this at the DLPC. We want feedback. Are there ways that we can improve this or refine it? Maybe more information that could be brought in. We're all ears. So. Next slide. Yes, and so the shifting gears, this is the other document. I'll hold it up. This is a slightly larger one, and I mean, I could probably talk about this for hours. I know Sophia had to sit through one of my, so our trustees are sitting in the back here, being very coy, but we've got IG Burton back here and Sophia Smecker of Dogfish Head out supporting us. Thank you for coming out and cheering us on here. Sophia had to sit through a much longer presentation about this. Again, there's a URL link. We've got it available as a physical copy and a digital copy. I'm hoping to whet your appetite enough that you say, gee, I want to learn more about this. I want to read, or at least want to look at the website. So we've got that here. And so this is the Delaware Bayshore Coastal Resilience Roadmap. Delaware being the lowest mean lying state, we were thinking, how do we dive in and how can we maybe add value for Delaware from a conservation perspective, and this seemed like a really good place for us. And so over 2 years, we did lots of engagement. We engaged across, I've been calling it 2 transects. So we wanted, one, the local municipalities, the counties, the states, and the federal entities to all be in a room together, which was just like a really great social experiment. I'll say I was shocked at how many folks had not met each other before, even though they're working on similar areas, just at these different levels. And then secondly, since it's not just an environmental conservation issue. This is an issue that requires all the DOTs, the Department of Agriculture, county planners to come in. We wanted to bring folks from these different cross sections together and stick them in a room and think about coastal resilience all together. And so we asked what visions for success might look like and what are the problems that we're seeing, so we could take more of a holistic approach. And we came up with 4 strategies, and these are huge buckets. They're going to not sound groundbreaking to you at all. You're gonna be like, duh, Will. But within these, I'll say there are specific actions. This is the teaser part for going and looking later. There's specific activities and actions that we propose within each of these broader strategies. So these are really big buckets. But the first one, which I think will resonate with y'all, is protecting coastal habitat migration space. This calls back to the blueprint, to pretty much everything we've been talking about today, is especially as sea level rise happens. I think about sea level rise a lot. Ideally, our coastal marshes will be able to move and adapt with sea level rise. It's a slow process, so we think about As the sea levels move upland and inland, so will these habitats that occupy this low and high tide niche. What might prevent them from doing that? It might be a development, it might be other infrastructure. And so really we want to see this open space, this kind of runway for coastal ecosystems to move into and persist in the face of climate change. The second piece is, and I have a lot of slides, I could go way into this, but we've been destroying and altering the resilience of our marshes for centuries. We found this 1911 Department of Agriculture document that was about ag lands reclamation. So it had specific examples in Delaware of how to convert this marsh into productive ag lands. And so we've been destroying this, and it cited references back to the mid 1700s. And so I think the more tangible example that we think about is grid ditching. And so this was a practice that we did in the 20s and 40s, mainly through the Civilian Conservation Corps, is that what it's called? Works Progress Administration with the New Deal, where folks went out and dug ditches in these marshes. And the idea was to increase the drainage to reduce mosquito presence and availability. What we didn't realize is we're really reducing the ability of these marshes to persist and survive sea level rise, because now there's these big channels for water to move in and out of, increase erosion. And when you look at the aerials, you can see all these grid patterned lines in our marshes. Nature doesn't typically work in straight lines and 90-degree angles. So you think that that's human influence. So just to say that we need to repair these marshes and give them a chance to fight and survive with sea level rise. So that's what that one proposes. The third, increasing community resilience to flooding. I think that everyone has firsthand experience. Hopefully on our drive home, we won't have firsthand experiences with flooded roadways, flooded basements, and we're seeing this at an increasing rate all the time. DelDOT told us they've got about 270 miles of nuisance flooding roadways that they manage in Delaware. And so we know this is an issue. So within this strategy, we propose incentives like increasing participation in the FEMA community rating system and these other types of activities to promote more flood resilient communities. And then the fourth one, and this is really a cross-cutting bucket, and thanks to Emily, is promoting climate considerate policies. And so we'll highlight one of the big wins that Emily really spearheaded was Senate Bill 237, which now requires counties to take climate change. It sounds, again, like, why aren't we doing this? But it feels groundbreaking. Counties and specific municipalities have to take climate change into account when designing and writing their county comprehensive plans. And so we felt like it was a big success, the passage of it, but we also think it's about how the rubber hits the road. And so there's a lot of attention we're going to be paying to make sure that this is implemented the way it was legislated and with the intent of it. So hopefully that gives you enough of a teaser to check out more. And my email is on the document, so feel free to reach out and ask questions or provide feedback, or if you want to have a conversation, happy to talk. Yes, I think is that the last, oh, we've got, sorry, can you hold that? We've got one more for Emily and then. Okay.
Thank you, Will. Hey, everybody. My name is Emily Nurl, and I do public policy for the Nature Conservancy in Delaware. And I don't know who was at the first SPC meeting, because remember, we sat around that kitchen table, dining room table, and formed the group. And I just have to give you guys huge kudos, because you have just outshone every kind of vision I felt like we had at the first meeting. So real quick, and then what we're going to do is open it up for questions, because we really want to have a dialogue. I'm going to be doing a quick state legislative session update. What I want to be really, really clear on is one of the neat things about the Delaware environmental community is we work really, really well together. We have friends from the League of Women Voters here, right? You guys have been helpful. Other partners that we work with have been Delaware Nature Society, Center for the Inland Bays, and Sierra Club. And the only reason I mention that is because I'm very conscious about not taking credit for all of this stuff, but saying this is teamwork, working with you and working with other people. Real quick, we got $10 million for open space, which you have no idea how hard that was. In a year where the state budget was dealing with the federal funding challenges, you'd think getting $10 million would be easy. Absolutely not. Huge kudos to Michelle's leadership, the Delaware Land Protection Coalition, and everybody who made their voice heard. We got $6.4 million for cover crop funding. That the governor wanted to do 4. Governor, by the way, we like this governor. I have to say that. We work well with him. We love the new DENREC leadership, if anybody wants to talk about that offline. We got $6.4 million for cover crop funding, which is really important about getting nutrients out of the waterways, right? It's kind of an insider baseball thing, but it's huge. It's absolutely huge. This one is really neat. We supported DenRec raising its fees and licensing, which I know sounds like, okay, I'm getting some head nods, right? Most of those fees hadn't been raised since the Soviet Union collapsed. DenRec is underfunded and understaffed. And so we were approached by DenRec in the governor's office to support that bill. The entire environmental community said yes. This one here, HB 210, is a sleeper bill, and we were very excited about that. Fines on air polluters and water polluters had also not been increased, in some cases since the 70s. And so some of the fines were roughly the equivalent of a traffic ticket. And so we all banded together, working with a bunch of really great legislators to increase the fines on polluters as well. SB 159, statewide clean energy planning, that was the bill that made it possible for offshore wind to join the PGM grid. Other really neat work, if you want to nerd out, is we named the blue dasher Delaware's official state dragonfly, the red knot as our official migratory bird. There were several really good energy bills that did you guys get really bad bills in January like the rest of us upstate? It was bad. So a whole series of bills that were passed both to increase transparency, pull out things so that power companies shouldn't effectively charge us for things they shouldn't be charging us for, as well as it took some Reggie funds, so it's not going to cost taxpayer dollars anything, to create a low income power fund. The idea that people shouldn't go into poverty or have their poverty exacerbated because they want to heat their house, right? So that was good. Looking ahead, we want more coordinated land use policies in 26. We want more action on plastics to get them out of our waterways. We want wetlands permitting. Anybody wants to talk about that? I'm not going to talk about it right now. I can talk about it forever. Nutrient management fine update. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Armageddon could very well be coming, and we really need to recognize that, is that the amount of federal funding that state government is going to lose, particularly in the climate preparation, community resilience, and disaster preparedness space, cannot be underemphasized. So one of the things we should talk about more, if you want to talk about, is what can we do working with the governor's office and the General Assembly in fiscal year, would actually be fiscal year 27, starting in January 26. How can we shore up and advocate for state investments where federal funding has been lost? I'd like to pull up my partners here, please. And please, we would just like to turn it over to you and answer questions. Please.
Sorry about that. Do you want who I am or anything? My name is Keith Steck. I live here in Milton, and I'm on the board of directors with the Delaware Coalition for Open Government. And I think some of what you're talking about is great. I think transparency is critical. And regarding that, you mentioned, well, that the identified strategies brought together county, state, federal people. What about local, town, and people in particular? Because a lot of communities, especially here in Sussex County, are affected by it, and they need to be involved because they have good ideas.
That's right. Yeah. So I neglected to mention. So we held workshops that were really our forum for, we were calling it the practitioners workshop. So folks who get paid to think about this. But in parallel, I actually went and traveled around and met with a lot of local residents, local elected officials, up and down, especially the Delaware Bayshore, to hear their perspectives, especially the ones who have lived here for decades and generations, to hear that firsthand change and the problems that specific communities are facing. So we initially had proposed maybe a workshop where everyone gets together, but it didn't quite work out that way. So certainly a lot of local voices were able to influence the creation of the document. And I give big thanks to the Bay Beach Association as well. I got a lot of my contacts through Kathy Locke, who runs that. So yeah, appreciate that.
Hold on 1 second. I'm coming. There you go.
I'm Laurie, and I am asking a question about money because it seems like all the money is coming from the state, which I'm fine with. very much fine with. But there's enough people that I've met in my years living here, 20 years we've been here, that absolutely love the environment, love the birds, love the trails, love everything, but they don't know that there's an organization starving for money that they could get. And if you could figure out a way to have, a connection to the people that live here, kind of like what has been done with Jill, um, I think you could get some money. It might take a few years and whatever, but we actually looked for you to see what you guys were a long time ago, and we couldn't find you. We didn't really know. Like, does Delaware have this? We lived in Maryland, and they had a great project. And the National Trust, just run to that. It's just a suggestion. They lost their funding, I don't know, years ago in the 70s, and they figured out a way to like start getting more members, get more members, get more money, and they went from like 12,000 members to like 250,000 members. And they were completely self-funded. They didn't even use the government anymore for funding because they were not very consistent. Didn't often get it to them. So just another way to get more money because you can get more stuff done.
Thank you very much. Let me just say really clear, the Nature Conservancy is always happy to have your money. So let me be really, really clear about that. Thank you. Your point is well taken. So one of the things we're actually looking at, so the Delaware Land Protection Coalition is staffed out of Center for the Inland Bays, and we serve as both an advisor and a help, right? And the DLPC does not have a 501c3, and we've not really talked about that. But one of the things that we'd identified going forward is how do we grow and strengthen the land conservation system in Delaware as it is. And so, yeah, your point is very well taken. We want to build that system. We need to figure out a way to do it. In terms of the DENREC money, the $10 million doesn't go to us. Only the state is allowed to spend that $10 million. So what we want to do is, as Michelle said, we want to both grow that amount, and we also want to open up that pot of money because we can leverage dollars working with our fabulous trustees, working with you guys. The state can't bring more money to things, but Center for the Inland Bays and the Nature Conservancy can. So we've got work to do. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Thank you.
And just to add on to that really quick, so Sussex County Land Trust, if you guys are familiar, they're the one land trust, not one land trust because TNC is also a land trust, but Sussex County Land Trust I mean, obviously really just focusing on land protection in Sussex. And so they're a good place if you do want to support land acquisition. The county has been really great at supporting land acquisition over the last several years. They've been putting $6 million towards land acquisition, and that's largely in part with Sussex County Land Trust. So the county will help to purchase land, and the land trust manages it. And so if you are interested in supporting land acquisition, they're another really good organization to donate to, and also the center. So the center will also take your money if you want to.
I have sort of a three-part question regarding the pollution fines. So one is, if somebody gets assessed a fine, where does that fine money go? And is it available to us for mitigation purposes or whatever? And then, gosh, I'm losing track of my second question. But my last question was, do you have a sense in Sussex or in Delaware in general where the point source versus, is it more point source polluters or non-point source polluters? And how do you deal with the non-point source in terms of collecting any money? And I just realized my third part of the question was, in terms of fines for people who pollute, have you thought about ways to incentivize potential polluters for not polluting in the first place? So the carrot rather than the stick.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, non-point source is a lot harder to get than point source, right? Non-point source is diffused. It comes from a whole bunch of different folks. This is mostly point source first. The other thing is that the fine goes into a pot of money with DENREC. And what's exciting about this legislation is that what used to happen is communities could apply for the funding to use it for a special project. So there was a violation in Delaware City, and it purchased a bike path in Newark. And the state legislator said that's not acceptable. What we need to do is you need to spend the money in the place the fine was accrued so that the overburdened community members or the people living next to the point benefit from it. But the other thing is that DenRec generally doesn't fine. And that piece is really important. They go for the carrot every single time. It's not, it's consistent with what other states do, so we're not an outlier. But what happens is the first thing DenRec does is DenRec goes to the individual who's, well, company who's been accused. They've got to document it, they've got to negotiate it, and they absolutely would much rather the company pay to fix it than they would to fine the company. So fines are definitely last resort. You tried to get them to fix it, you tried to get them to mitigate it, and you weren't making progress. Fines, frankly, are rare because the identified strategy of the state at this point is to work with folks first. What we're hoping is increasing the fines. There's been some speculation that some folks, it's cheaper to violate and then just pay the fines. So the idea is the legislator who, Larry Lambert, who I have to give all credit for, from up in Claymont, his thought was, well, let's make it more expensive to violate so we can encourage people to work with the state and address the problem.
Questions? If I get this so that people online can hear.
I forgot to take off my Route 24 Alliance hat and put on my SPC hat because DenRec, the Division of Fish and Wildlife, is currently doing its 10-year conservation plan, and SPC would like to participate in that. And they're trying to identify species of greatest conservation need, identify habitats, identify current and future threats. So anybody who is here tonight who would like to be a part of, I'd like to have a little committee to work on that. So my name is Judy Rose Seibert, and we'll put the information on how to contact me up on the website.
And actually, if I can add to that, Judy makes a really good point. Every 10 years, DenRec has to update a wildlife action plan that effectively builds the Delaware endangered species list. And we plan to comment. I'm sure you guys plan to comment as well. But the one thing I wanted to highlight is I am not a species expert. A lot of folks aren't, but they also want habitat comments. And you guys are very well versed on the key areas that you think are worth saving. And one more quick thing, I need to give out a shout out to Joe. Have you guys, the Rethinking Delaware work, right? I don't want to lose that. There is a whole group of us coming together. You guys are represented by Joe to have the state and the counties have a more constructive land use relationship. So that what happens is there's more coordination. So something isn't approved and then the roads and the schools follow, but can we work a little bit together on the front end to be more constructive?
Thank you. Any other questions? So we'll get this information and the links up on our website because I know I personally want to dive into open space and natural habitats, particularly as I go through this land use reform working group. So let's give a thank you to Emily and Michelle and Will. I wish we had more time to dive into those details.